Welcome to the Church of Mabus radio show. It's Friday night. It's 7:10 p.m. Central. You're listening to United Public Radio, 107.7 FM New Orleans. Jay McNicholas, our co-host, will be here shortly. He's having an update or something weird on his computer. It says almost there. He'll be here shortly. We have our guest here with us, Jerry Sargeant. His book is Healing with Light Frequencies, the Transformative Power of Star Magic. And good to have you here, Jerry. Great to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Jeffrey. It's a pleasure.
And I was just looking at, you have another book coming out soon as well from, is it Inner Traditions or the superhero one or something? Let me find
it. Activate your superhuman potential.
Yes, I was just looking at that one, and they're supposed to send me that one too in the future. Well, it's interesting that you talk about stars, because one of my big experiences after, being healed from cancer and my father's death was I've seen beings of light, and in the heavens, I've seen two leave my house. And I came across a quote in a Jeffrey Mishlove book about some stars are indeed deities. And there's just, stars are just fascinating. What is a star to you? To me, I wonder if some of them are beings of light. I don't think they all are, but there's definitely some weird stuff going on with stars. No doubt about it. It's an odd thing.
Yeah, I mean, stars for me are beings themselves. I mean, I truly feel that we've been stars, and we may return to being stars in the future at some point. They've got an intelligence, they carry frequency, and with inside our DNA, inside our biological makeup, we've got stardust. We came from up there, and we're going to return back there at some point. And with the work that we do, I mean, we use the stars themselves to bring in frequencies to heal body parts, to heal injuries, illness, disease, and they're powerful. Yeah, I mean, there's so much that we could talk about stars.
Yeah, and with stars, I've noticed that, there's been times I've peered into the heavens and seen those beings of light, and often they're similar as the stars. I'm like, are they the stars? Or is there different types of stars versus the beings of light? Or is every star a being of light? But it's almost like that quantum realm around the earth is a staging area for if we pass away. I wonder if that's where we go. And you had just said similar, and it's kind of like they usher you, maybe you do a life review, or maybe next they usher you off to wherever. But it's kind of like it kind of reminds me of The Sims, that game. When you look into it, I've seen like the sight into it and seen, and then you have to wonder when you sleep, do you go there too? It's fascinating on so many levels. I know in shamanism they call them luminous beings of light and things like that. But that area up in the heavens, is that some kind of is it a staging area where we go when we pass as well, do you think?
That's a big question, bro. I mean, when we leave this physical body, I mean, our consciousness gets the opportunity, we've got a soul, we've got a spirit, we've got consciousness, and we get the opportunity to move on somewhere else. But we're part of like a multi-dimensional matrix, and we're part of like a system that is made up of multiple dimensions, and those dimensions fit into frequencies and densities. And we should get the opportunity to move on and have the choice to go wherever we want to go to. But most people don't really know they've got a choice, and a lot of souls end up coming back down onto this planet again, back into another body, and through this kind of physical vehicle, because we're blank slated and our memories are wiped when we come back down onto Earth and we incarnate. We become like a food source to other energies, other beings. I mean, there are lighter and darker forces in the universe, and a lot of them feed off of the low vibrational energies that come out of human beings.
That's interesting that you say that. And I know in your book you talk about these parasitical beings. And I've had some strange things come up with my. I was living in another house with my fiance Christina, and she was a nurse, and we were doing. She was doing hospice care for her grandmother, and her mother was there as well. The grandmother eventually passed, but we had some phenomenon happen there. And one thing was, it seemed like a glass blew up near Christina, on a table that was crystal, and there was no really explanation for it. I tried to look at it like scientifically or whatever. It was just a weird experience. But another thing that happened, something slapped our bed late at night, and there was no pets in there. I thought something fell from a shelf, but I got up with a flashlight looking around. Did something fall from a shelf? Nothing fell, and something hit the bed. And we just had a lot of weird experiences there. And there's a lady on the network, Michelle Desrochers, who has a show on the network, and her and another friend did a clearing, and they had said that there was some gray aliens, and they removed some kind of interstellar demon, and this was from far away. And I was like, my mind was trying to, grasp all this, that they're saying this stuff is there, and they're from far away doing like remote healing and stuff, and they're respectable. They've been on a lot of shows, they've been around a long time, so I trust them. But sometimes when you hear stuff that your mind's like, what you talking about, Willis? But there was weird stuff going on in that house. So we ended up, a lot happened, and we ended up moving to another location, and some stuff's been heavy here and stuff, and they did another clearing here, and I sent them pictures and stuff, and they said some gremlin type beings came up that like to start fights and feed off energy, and also another two other demonic big entities that they removed. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? And I'm somebody that's seen weird stuff. I've seen UFOs parked over different houses that I've lived at, and friends go, Jeffrey, you're attracting them here. And I've seen some weird beings. And I don't know if I've ever been abducted, like physically, but if I have, I don't remember a damn thing at all. They wipe me clean, but I've seen enough weird stuff to where I'm open, and I think there is a heaviness here, and there was at that other house. But there was also some experiences. I'd never seen a gray, and I can go out. Sometimes I go into the sun and let the white light fill me with my eyes closed and kind of meditate on it. And I went into that other house, and in the grandmother's room where she was passing, I saw kind of like an astral gray alien peek out, like it was surprised it saw me, and go back into the room. And I had never seen a gray before. At first, I thought I was just seeing a weird sunspot from, the sun, but it was weird and humanoid shape, but kind of pink, like astral. And then another night, Christina saw one standing over the bed over me. And there's just been weird experiences. And lately, we've been dealing with a lot of tiredness, and just different things that feel crappy on a lot of levels. So we're trying to raise our vibrations to deal with it all. But I do believe there are crazy vampire beings that feed off your energy. So, I mean, how did you come across this research? And I mean, what can you tell us about some of these parasitical beings?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, you tell the story about the house, and like, them doing the remote stuff to remove it, and all of that, because that was really similar to a few experiences that happened to me at the start of my kind of journey of discovery, I suppose. I mean, I didn't used to believe in any of this stuff. I used to think it was all a lot of nonsense, like anything to do with God, the universe, spirituality. And we had a business actually, and it went south, and we had to move into a new property, a rented accommodation. I was with my ex-wife, children, and I was watching TV one night. Like, this is back in like 2005 ish, and my missus comes downstairs and she says, Jerry, every time I close my eyes, I hear all these dark voices, and I see all these dark images. And she said, when I'm pushing the pushchair down the road in the morning, it feels like something's trying to make me push the pushchair into the road, like to kill the baby, like. And I looked at her and I thought, this sounds really weird, but you're my wife, I love you. What do you want to do about it? So she called her friend, and her friend was a priest. So this lady came around our house and she starts like dousing the house and all this energy, and she put crosses up and all this stuff. And I was sat there thinking, man, this is like something out of the poltergeist. This is really kind of strange. And then she calmed Laura down. Laura goes to bed. The next day I went to see my friend and I said, listen, this really weird thing happened in our house last night. I said, what do you make of it? And he said, you've got to speak to this lady. So he gave me the name and the telephone number of a lady. Now, I was living in London at the time, and she lived right the other side of the UK. So I phoned her up, and she didn't answer, but she called me back a little while later. And, I told her the story. And she said, where do you live? And I said, we live at 316 Richmond Road. And that was the only little bit of the address that I gave her. And the phone went quiet. And then she said, have you been knocking any walls down? I said, well, we rent the property, but the previous owner has clearly built an extension. She said, yeah, you've got an angry old man in your house. I said, what do you mean an angry old man? I've not seen him. I can't see this angry old man. So I said, okay, let's pretend there is an angry old man. Like, what are we going to do about it? She said, I'll get rid of him for you. I said, brilliant. When can you come round? She said, oh, I don't need to come round. I can do it from here. So I'm thinking, this is getting a bit weirder and a bit weirder. She said, so anyway, we spoke for a bit longer. I put the phone down. I went home and I spoke to my missus and I said, listen, I know I didn't tell you I was going to do this, but I've spoke to this lady and about what happened last night, and she reckons there's an angry old man in the house. And my missus turns around to me and said, yeah, Jerry, I know, I've seen him. So I thought, right, you've seen this angry old man, this lady who neither of us have ever met, who lives the other side of the country, she's seen this angry old man. I thought there must be some kind of truth to it. So I phoned her back up and I said, listen, I don't know what you do, but I need to come and see you. So I ended up booking an appointment. I went and seen this lady, and she did like past life regression therapy. She worked for Scotland Yard in the psychic division, and she kind of like became my first spiritual teacher. And she taught me how to remote view, how to bring my light out of my body and travel, how to move through different dimensional spaces, pick up information, stuff like that. So that was kind of how things sort of kicked off for me. And then like loads of different things happened. But in terms of like the sort of darker side, about maybe 6 months to a year later, me and my friends, we were researching like the end of the Mayan calendar in 2012 and all of this sort of stuff. And we went to a talk that was being given by this man in a place called Basingstoke, which was just outside of London. And we got there and we sat down in this guy's living room, like me and my two mates, there's a few other people. And this guy's like, he's talking to us about, 2012, all of this sort of stuff, spirituality. And like, we're really green, like we're just getting into this stuff and we're just fascinated by everything. And I asked him a question and it was a little bit contradictory. I wasn't trying to be rude, but it was contradictory. And he stopped and he looked at me and he held my stare, and then his human face just disappeared. And there was like a green lizard looking at me. And like, I'm sat there thinking like, what is going on? Like on the outside, I'm trying to like cool as a cucumber. On the inside, I'm thinking, man, this is nuts, So he held me stare for what seemed like an eternity. And then the reptile face disappeared and his human face came back again. And he carried on talking. And then that night, he started trying to psychically attack me and my friends. And that's when I started meeting my first guides, light beings, spirit guides, who came to help me. And then like over the years, I've had like so many experiences with them. I mean, I was in Turkey going back like 3-4 years. I was working on a client at a healing center over there, and this being came in behind me like a Baphomet with got a goat's head with horns and that, and it started pumping fire through my back. So I stopped it when it got to my elbows and I pushed it back out of my body and got rid of it. And then that night I went into the gym. I had a training session. One of the guys in the gym, he was like, he was acting really funny. He was rude. He was taking my weights and moving them around. And the next night I was in the gym, he was really nice to me. And I realized that the night before, something had come into his body and was trying to get him to aggravate me. Now, when I came out of the gym, I went into the sauna and I was sat in the sauna and I looked through the little glass window in the wooden door and there were three beings looking at me. Like one had a Tyrannosaurus Rex's head and there were two with like green lizardy kind of reptilian heads. And they were just kind of staring at me and I'm thinking, what's going on? Now, over the course of the next days, I started getting lots of information about my birth and different things that had happened to me. And these beings didn't really want me to have that information. So the next day, I was having dinner with a lady, and we were in a restaurant, and this being came through the wall, tried to stab me in my kidney, and attacked me like astrally. So I brought my light out of my body. I'm running around the restaurant with like a bow and arrow and shooting like arrows of light into this being to get rid of it whilst having dinner. And then the next day, my daughter phones me from England, and a reptilian had dragged her off of her horse, had put her up against the gate in the stables, and was eating her womb. And I went in, I managed to drag this thing off and get rid of it. And her periods weren't right for maybe 2 years, So, even though this was happening in the astral, it was happening physically at the same time. And we've had loads of different experiences like this. I mean, we remove these things from people all the time in healing sessions. We have specific training days where we teach people how to remove these things from the energetic field, from the physical body, different scenarios.
Yes. I've had some reptilian experiences. There was a Halloween. It was a pretty long time ago. Uh, God, 10 years or more. We had been partying, doing certain substances, psychedelics, and things like that. And I saw some reptilians around a lake. Like it was almost like they were kind of floating over the lake. And one was kind of almost, it looked like it had snakes for hair. I was like, that is that Medusa? Wasn't Medusa, but it was just weird. And another one was like a Hydra, and it was like they were kind of like a hologram or holographic or something like that. And my first thought, being from Georgia and being raised in a Christian from a dad that was a preacher and things, was like, oh my God, it's the devil, fallen angels, and freaking out that I was seeing, the devil. And I kept getting messages about, we love you and sing and dance, like positive stuff. At the time, it was just very confusing. But some things that I've seen later about them that look similar were some Mayan god glyphs, like from these oracle cards that are wood glyphs or something, and some of those Aztec kind of things. That's what they reminded me of. I also came across some encounter stories describing a being that they said had antennas on its head, and that's kind of like what it was. I don't know if they were snakes or braids or what the hell they were, but I've definitely had some reptilian experiences. And even now, some of the stuff I'm going through with blood pressure, kidney stone, you know, I'm dealing with blood pressure stuff lately. And then I hear about these beings. I know recently I watched that Obi-Wan Kenobi show on Disney, the new Star Wars. And there's the dark side has these inquisitors. They're kind of like witch hunters. And if you're force sensitive, they're coming after you and they'll either kill you or turn you to the dark side. And it kind of reminded me of, it seemed like in my early 20s, I had a lot of these UFO experiences and seen weird beings. But at the time, I had like this weird military helicopter show up over my house that made no noise. It was like a helicopter, but you didn't really see the tail and the propeller. It was more like a weird cockpit. And there was a guy in it that kind of looked like, Top Gun with all this stuff on him, and he waved mockingly and it shot off. It was almost like it came out because of those UFOs to see what was going on. And it's almost like there's something that if it finds out you're opening your gifts or Christ consciousness or whatever, it comes out and then it tries to interfere, or or something. It's in it. But when I saw that on Obi-Wan Kenobi, I was like, that reminds me of, some of the way I think about some of this stuff. Like he's, force sensitive, Darth Vader's coming for you. You're going to the dark side or dead. So, I mean, it seems like there's something like that, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, these movies are accurate. You know, they're so spot on a human level, and like an extraterrestrial metaphysical level too. I mean, if we talk about like a physical level, I remember a few years ago, like we started putting Merkabas up around our house and just playing with the energy. And I walked outside to go to the shop one day, and we had a black helicopter over the house. Literally, like you could, it was that close you could kind of see into the cockpit. And it was just kind of observing, like, why are these guys producing so much energy out of nothing, you know? And then, on like a metaphysical level, like we have these things wrapped around the planet, like invisible kind of energetic fields called frequency fences. And as your vibration goes up and you hit a frequency fence, it like triggers the game that we're playing, the Matrix, this hologram. And then it starts to, communicate with minds of human beings to try and come into your space to maybe say something that might annoy you and bring down your vibration. Or it sends in like other beings. There are many different kinds of beings. I mean, we call them shadow parasites because they behave like normal parasites, but they live in the shadows. Like if you get like a caterpillar that lives in the jungle, you get parasites that go into their bodies, take over their consciousness, make them climb to the top of the tallest tree, and then they explode. And then all of that juice goes over the like leaves and bushes, or whatever. Then the other caterpillars eat that, and that parasite gets into them, and then they all climb to the top of the tallest tree, and the parasite grows. But these energetic parasites, they come into human beings' energy field, they come into the physical body. Sometimes they work remotely, and they take over the brain and the psyche of a human being, and they can make human beings think certain things. They can help the human beings stay addicted to cocaine or alcohol or pornography or whatever it is they can keep them addicted to keep their vibration low. So it is like we're in a spiritual war. We've been in a spiritual war for such a long time. And, being on that kind of high vibration or love vibration, that high humor vibration, that bliss, joy vibration, they're the things that kind of enable us to navigate this and raise our frequency high enough to stop these things kind of having an effect. But a big part of the human population are suffering with entities, demons, shadow parasites, whatever you want to call them, on a big level.
Definitely. And we have Jay here with us finally. You got interviewed by two bald aliens now to interview you. And well, good to have you here, Jay. And when it comes to these parasitical beings, I mean, what are things that you do to remove them? Is it about raising your vibration? And I mean, it seems obvious that they've been after me for a long time. I know I had a friend of mine that I used to hang out with, and in my early 20s, and he lived with me for a while, and he was telling me a story about he remembers waking up in a house with sleep paralysis and seeing these demons standing over him. One had red weird hair and like remembers it drooling and burning his skin, and then he woke up screaming, and I remember that, but I forgot it. But I'm almost like, man, these things have been after me since like forever, and I don't try to let it go to my head or anything. I mean, there's a lot of stuff I need to be doing. Like I would like to write more books. I'd like to do another, YouTube situation, things that help people. But I have to wonder if sometimes they're like trying to stop you from doing that, or maybe they're on me because of what I do now with this, which is a lot. 14 years of raising consciousness, and they don't like it. But what are some things that you do that for yourself personally to protect you? Just a little bit, if you could go into some of the things you do to keep them away.
Yeah, and it's a really good question, and like it depends like where you're at with all this stuff. Well, because like when I first kind of found out about it and I started working with all this stuff, I was like, okay, I need to put my grids up. I was putting different geometries around me to to stop frequencies coming through my field and interfering with what was going on. I put them around my property, etc., etc., and they work. Don't get me wrong, but I think what happens then as you kind of progress and you get, more, you know, into this stuff, and you start to really kind of understand it and get to grips with it, and you're comfortable with it, then just having like a high level of awareness and staying in that kind of present moment state, like all the time, where you're in your heart and not bouncing around in your head. You can stay in a calm state of awareness, and you can see and feel what is going on around you, and that itself is enough to kind of keep your space clear, because you catch it in the moment. When you're kind of starting off, then it is much better to kind of put something up around you, to stop things interfering in your space. So, something like an octahedron, you can get like a chromium colored octahedron, visualize it around your body, and then stick an inverted chromium pyramid around that, which is larger, and then say a cube and a sphere. So you've got 4 geometries all spinning clockwise. You can feel them for the diamond or chromium frequency, and the beings, it'd be hard for them to come through, but if they do come into those chromium diamond energies, you're going to feel them and see them, and they won't be able to shape shift fast enough to move through chromium. Like kaleidoscopic chromium is like an Andromedan frequency that we were introduced to several years ago, and there's a massive wide color range within it, like all the pinks, all the oranges, all the yellows, any color across multiple dimensional spaces that you could, frequency bands that you could possibly imagine, is held within this kaleidoscopic chromium. So as the beings try and come through, like they might get through and shapeshift for several seconds, but then by the time they get through the whole grid, you're going to catch them. Now, once you see them, I mean, if your heart is wide open and you're in a pure loved out state, these beings can't come into your frequency field anyway. If you're a bit of a guilt, if you're feeling guilt or rejection or fear or any kind of low vibrational energy, then it's much easier for them to come into you. And I think what's really important for everyone to know is that for these beings to get inside you, there has to be some kind of like contract set up. So like if you're in a, let's say, I don't know, you've left your missus or your husband, or you've been beaten by your partner, or something like, some trauma has happened in your life and your vibration is down, and you're like, just get me out of this situation. I just want to get out of this. Like, help me. And you're kind of reaching out to something that you don't even know you're really reaching out to. And these beings are there in the quantum field, like talking to you and whispering into your consciousness, like, we can help you. And they set up some kind of deal where it's like, okay, you let us live precariously through your energy field, then we'll help you out of this situation. And so you contract and you lock into it. So if someone comes to us and they've got these entities, then the first thing that we need to do is to find out when the contract happened. Go into that space, break the contract. Once you've broken the contract, bring that soul fragment, if it's a past or future life, into healing, or if it's in this reality, like an inner child or a teenage part of this human being, into healing, and then remove the entity. And to remove the entity, like, we've got a process. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put like a smoky quartz pyramid around the human being that we're working on, and the entity, if it's in their body or if it's in the energy field, it might be a bit of a bigger smoky quartz pyramid. We've got a code that we put into the pyramid, which is M369, and the code is programmed so that once you remove the entity from the human being, you cut a hole in the pyramid, creates a portal, you stick the entity through, and the code is like a satellite navigation system. So it will take the entity to whichever dimensional space it needs to go to. In an ideal world, it would go back to source, but sometimes it's got learning to do. It might need to go back to demon school or wherever it needs to go to learn its lessons. So, but the code will take it there. And there might be one entity, there could be multiple entities in a human being. But we'll put the smoky quartz pyramid around so that when you take the entity out, it can't go anywhere. It's stuck inside the pyramid to give you the opportunity to cut the hole and stick it through. Yeah.
So a lot of it's like visualization and like using the realms of the imagination and things like that to deal with them, right? Like it's kind of like Jedi force powers.
Yeah, I mean, imagination is reality. You know, like if you
Yes.
see something in the field, like it can't be. It's not just like at school. We're like, you imagine something, and it's like something you make up, right? But actually, your imagination is reality. So whatever you're seeing in the quantum field is there in some reality. Some dimensional space.
And I know in shamanism, creative visualization is a big thing, and using that to visualize different things. I call on Archangel Michael a lot. That's a good one that I've seen in light worker type stuff and things like that. And there's a lot of different stuff that I try to do, but sometimes it just seems like you're beating a dead horse. Like I don't know what it is lately. I know the world is in a really weird place right now, and I have to wonder with all the COVID craziness that just happened. And you have the crazy Ukraine stuff. I mean, Putin's threatening to nuke Ireland and us and Finland and Sweden. I mean, one match could set this thing going. It's a lot of fear and craziness right now, and you can feel it in the air, and it's kind of like just paralyzing almost. And it's just trying to figure out how to protect yourself from it and not get caught up in the fear of it. And these beings are probably loving it because it's dinner time, you know, for
Absolutely.
sure. It's
Yeah.
just absolutely crazy on so many different levels right now. And we were just like, hoping COVID would be over, and that's still not really over. And now you got all this, like I see a lot of these prepper people, that doomsday preppers and stuff, they're going crazy as hell right now. It's here. It's here. What we've been waiting for. You better be prepping right now. It's here. Like they're going nuts, which I mean, there's a lot of food shortages right now. So I guess that's why. So things are just nuts. So, I mean, is there particular things you do to shield yourself from some of this stuff? Like, I mean, you talked about some methods, but let's say you're having a day where you feel kind of crappy. I mean, what would you do to kind of boost your energy?
Yeah, I mean that's a real good question, and I think it comes back to that kind of like prevention is better than cure, and if you like have certain protocols that you do every day, then you should never really kind of tip into that state. I mean, even though it can happen, like there's curveballs that come and smash us from time to time, but like when we're training people to heal with star magic, like one of the most important things that we'll get across to people is it's not really just a healing modality, it's a lifestyle. So when you wake up in the morning, you get meditation, breath work, cold showers, exercise, doing all of these things that can keep you tip top. So, and throughout the day, I mean, if you stop and you do 4 or 5 minutes of holotropic breath work or fire breathing or trauma breathing, that breath, that oxygen and that light, man, it can turbocharge you. It's like you've had like, 3 or 4 double espressos and you're just feeling high and happy and on it, just from the breath, going out and doing a bit of sun gazing. We were talking earlier, Jeffrey, before, we kind of got on, and you were saying how hot it is in Florida at the moment. I mean, that's the perfect time. Get out in the morning, the first hour of daylight, the last hour of daylight, start staring at the sun and activating the pineal gland. Making sure that you're putting foods into your body that are drenched in sunlight. Again, activates the DNA, the pineal, and it keeps us in a higher vibrational state. And things like TV, smash your TV up, get rid of it, smash up your radio, like just get rid of these things that are pumping, stuff into your consciousness that is just no good. Like we have to, consume everything that is of a high vibration. And it's not just food, it's like information too. Certain pieces of information are of much higher vibrational nature. Like the stuff we're talking about now, this stuff is, expand your consciousness and give you a different perspective on life and give you some tools to help you become a more, elevated human being. Instead of just going home, getting home from work, sticking on the news or putting some kind of, crap on the TV that just numbs you down.
Yeah, I'm having to be more careful with horror movies. Like There's just particular ones that are too much, and I don't like the kind that are real violent, that are too much. But there's classics, that I can't let go of those, like Dracula and Frankenstein. Like I don't think all those are terrible, but there's some of the stuff that comes out that's like the slashers and crazy stuff. That's too much. So I have to keep it mild. Maybe some comedy in there, like Bruce Campbell kind of stuff, Evil Dead situations. Even that's a lot. But I've been trying to watch more comedies because that's what the lady said that did some clearings. Watch some comedies, and not. We watched The Burbs last night with Tom Hanks, and that was even kind of dark, but it wasn't that. It wasn't a horror movie really. It just had some weird stuff in it. But yeah, I've been trying to keep the comedies going, and well, let's let Jay ask a few questions, and we'll come back to me. But so far, it's been great, and we appreciate you being here, Jerry. And let's get Jay with some questions. I can catch my breath.
Yeah, I got a good follow up to what you said a little while ago about the demon parasites, how they get into your body and cause you to do things that you're kind of addicted to or having feelings for, like porn or video games or whatever, and keep your frequencies from getting higher. What do you think about all these cell phone apps and these stupid games that everybody plays? I mean, I confess I have some in mind, but it seems like that's one of those things you're talking about that keeps your frequency from getting to the point where these demon parasite entities can't affect you.
Yeah, you know what? It's a great question. Like, going back a couple of years, right? My son's like 17 now. So going back to when he was about 14, 15, we were traveling a lot, before COVID and all that, running our trainings and training people with Star Magic. And like I homeschool my children, like they've not been at school for years, and like my son was really big into it, like these computer games on his phone. Like, I'd wake up in the morning in a hotel and I'd be hearing like, duck, duck, duck. He's coming up the left-hand side, and he'd be have a headset on. He's speaking to like loads of people. They're on this army game. They're shooting each other, and and he'd be on this thing all the time. It used to drive me crazy. But I made this kind of pact. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna let my kids try and figure this stuff out for themselves. And this computer game thing with the phone, it was driving me around the bend. But I've made this kind of pact. Let them be free like flowers. Water them, love them, and just let them kind of grow and figure out life. And what happened is I kept saying to him, you should, why don't you put the phone away? Why don't you give it a little bit of a break? And he's like, nah, Dad. And he'd get really angry on it, like real angry. And one day his phone broke, and I was like, thank goodness. Anyway, he's like, Dad, can you get me another phone? I'm like, no, I'm not getting you another phone because you're just going to play those games. So anyway, like several months went past, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to get him a phone and then just see if he notices the difference. So I got him a new phone. He started playing it, and he noticed straight away how his mood changed, and I didn't need to do anything. He just came to me and said, you know what, this game is really bad. I know what you're saying now. I've been so happy since the phone broke, and now my vibration's gone right down again. And he stopped himself, But it's a big problem, and we get a lot of clients as well that come to us, and it's not. It can be computer games, it can be porn, different things that people watch on the phones. There's like codes that are embedded into the programs of the games and different porn sites. It triggers things in people's psyches. Like to give you an example, we had a guy who lived in Taiwan, right? And he went into a porn site and went into one of those little chat rooms on the side, and there was something disgusting in there. But once he'd had this experience, like at nighttime, he started to not be able to sleep. When he started trying to go to sleep, it was like he was entering the Matrix. And he'd like enter, let's say, a white room. There was no doors to get out. There'd be things chasing him, trying to get him. And so he'd be going through these crazy processes every single night. And then he started to notice that at 10 o'clock every night, a satellite would come around outside his apartment. And that is when it would trigger this thing in the back of his neck. And it would keep him up all night. He started sleeping in a Faraday cage, like all these different things. And it ruined his life for like a year and a half. And then he got in contact, and we went in and we were able to kind of shift it and move it around. But this guy was doing research on this stuff, and he found a doctor in America that was saying that he kind of helped, create this kind of technology. And he contacted the doctor, and he showed me the Facebook messages, because I was like, is he kind of pulling my leg here? But he sent me the screenshots, and he contacted the doctor, and the doctor said, yeah, I helped create this technology. He said, the best thing you can do, my friend, is go and get a gun, put it in your mouth, and shoot yourself. And that's what he turned around to him on Facebook and said, so this guy was like thinking there's nothing that he can even do about this. Now, we managed to remove it all and get rid of it, but it took about 3 months of working like every day, like doing little pieces, trying to figure out, because there was this complex system in the back of his neck that had been activated, very, very strange and weird,
Yeah, I don't know if there's devices in people's brains or what, but people have been saying, they've been having fun with the zombie apocalypse for the last decade or more. And I said, it's never going to happen. There's never going to be zombies on the planet, but they are. If you look out on the street, any time of the day, you can see people walking down the street in their cell phone, completely oblivious to the traffic and things around them. It's like, what is it? You said there's codes. Is there also like physical implants? Because we know, like with the alien UFO stuff, there have been some actual physical implants removed from the human body that were of unknown origins, unknown metals, and also when they take it out, there's no pathology. Like the implants from the extraterrestrial technology doesn't create an inflammatory response, so the body doesn't reject it. So is that something also what's going on?
Absolutely. I mean, not just implants, but also coming back to kind of like, shadow parasites as well, like parasitic beings. So they can take over human consciousness. And, I see people walking down the road, like you're saying, they're kind of like, walking like that. And you look at them, they can be pale. There's no life force in them. You look into their eyes, there's no spark. I mean, some of these people have souls and they've been taken over, but you get some other beings as well that are kind of like hybrid beings that are soulless as well. And then you also get other beings or other people that have got implant networks in them. So little devices, they could be in the ear, they could be in the brain, they're in the heart sometimes. Sometimes you find them in kidneys and fingers. Sometimes they're like weaves, like in the back of the neck, all the way down through the spine and into the genitals. Sometimes they're like etheric, and sometimes they're like little pieces of like metal. They look like iron, like some kind of weird silvery iron. Like I've got a couple of pieces that we've taken out of people when we've been doing healings and stuff. I've spoken to dentists and doctors that have removed objects that there's no, the person's never had a filling, they've never had an operation, but they've got these weird things in their bodies. So I mean, some people get taken on crafts in dream time when they're kids or teenage years, sometimes a bit older. Sometimes they'll come into people's bedrooms and put these things in. So yeah, I mean, and there really are zombies that are like running around. It's wild, but it's true.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a stretch, but there's only one up. That's only the explanation I can think of. It's just the way these people walk around, face deep in their cell phones. I work in a large hardware store, and the kids that follow their parents around, I don't know how they follow their parents. They're just they got some kind of like compass technology in their brain. They know which way their parents have turned through the store. It's kind of disturbing, but I don't know, maybe we can get away from it. And I got something that I don't know if you've heard about this. I know your book is about healing with light frequencies and starlight healing, star magic healing. Years ago, it might have been 10, 15, 20 years ago, doctors and scientists were saying how, when we were kids, we would take flashlights and put them up to our hand. You could see the bones through your hand and you could see the tendons and whatnot. And they started working on technology. I don't know where they went with it yet, if they have it, but to replace x-rays and MRIs and CAT scans, they wanted to use light to look into the body to diagnose things. What do you know about that? And would that actually work? And what kind of technology would we have? Where are we with that?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of talk at the moment about med beds and things like that, like medical beds, from other extraterrestrial species. You know, they say that certain governmental bodies have got them, and they're using them to help with people coming out of the military to replace limbs and that sort of thing. Like when we're doing our work, like we do a lot of meditation work, a lot of journey work, and we've found these like holographic tables, like in mountains, like, you know, so you'll be journeying and you find them. Now, what we do is we take our clients' holograms. So let's say, for example, I'm working on someone and they're in another country, because all of our work is done remotely, unless we're in a training session in-house and we're doing demonstrations or a 2-day workshop or something. Everything's remote. So I would create a hologram of whoever I'm working on, entangle it, let's say with Jay Nicholas or Jeffrey Pritchard, and you would then become this hologram, or you'd be entangled with the hologram, and whatever I did to the hologram would then happen to you in physical real time, you know? So what we then do is take that hologram to one of these holographic tables and lay it down inside of it, and magic happens. Like, these holographic tables will work on the hologram, whether it's an injury, illness, disease, some kind of emotional issue, whatever it is, broken bone. Like, these things will produce healing. You know, you literally lie people down inside and things happen. I mean, there's also these kind of healing chambers that we take people to underneath the pyramids in Egypt. I discovered those years ago. And, you know, one of the very first, like, profound healings that happened when a guy, he was in hospital and he had like diverticulitis, he had E. coli, peritonitis, and he had some tumors in his belly. And the doctors had said to him, you know, you'll be lucky to make it through the next 24 hours, but if you do, we're going to have to remove like 10 feet of your intestine and put a colostomy bag in for the rest of your life. So anyway, they drugged him up, they pumped him full of medicine, they worked on him, and he made it, he lived, right? And then they booked him in. This was like around Christmas time, and they booked him in for February the next year to have his colostomy bag fitted. So he got in contact with me, found me on YouTube. I went in to do the healing on him, and these 2 big shafts of light came down the side of his bed. I picked up his hologram and I took it to these healing chambers in Egypt, right? I laid him down, and these Egyptian surgeons, they came out with these crystal light rods. They cut his belly open, they removed the tumors, and then did some other stuff on him. I picked up his hologram, brought it back to his bedroom, and laid him back down. And he woke up and he had a scar across his belly. And he went back to the doctor, and the doctor said, what's happened to you? He said, I had a spiritual operation. They did all the tests, no tumors, no E. coli, no peritonitis. Like, if you go to our website, starmagichealing.com, you can look at the video. You can see the scar and all this sort of stuff. So, like, these kind of holographic chambers, holographic tables, you know, you take people to the magic happens. And the thing is, like, you don't really have to do anything. People think that, you know, like, a lot of the time that we're doing these amazing healings, but all we're doing is taking people to a space where the healing can happen. You know, setting up an environment or going to a healing chamber. And there's so many beings in the invisible fields, in the multi-dimensional playing fields, that will come and help.
Wow. So okay. That's a lot. So I had heard about certain new medical beds. And if you've watched any of the original Star Trek series, whenever someone went to the sick bay, they would lay down on these beds, and then a graphic computer screen behind them would come to life and show the doctor what their pulse was, their, you know, gas ratios in their blood, their everything that he needs to know right away: heart pressure, blood pressure, pulse, brain waves, and all that. And I understand that in certain big hospitals they have those now. But what you're saying is you have a holographic bed that not only when someone gets down on it, it maps out exactly what's wrong with them, shows you what's wrong, and then fixes it.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
It's probably about like that deep, just enough to lay a human down. You lay them on top of the bed, and their hologram sinks down into it, and it like code comes out from both ends, from the sides. It locks into the hologram, and it's like the hologram it kind of dissolves into geometry, and it becomes this kind of like liquid plasma that floats through the table, and the healing takes place, and then it's kind of reassembled, and then it lifts back out, and then you can just take it back. Yeah,
That sounds really cool. Because I had heard in comic books, I don't mean to sound like a goofball, but you mentioned the healing chambers under the pyramids. These are talked about in particularly the Marvel universe, where they have a bad guy called Ensaba Nur, the guy named Apocalypse. He's got a chamber called, oh God, what does he call it? The Lazarus chamber, Lazarus pit, something like that. He can go into this pit after he's been severely damaged, even killed, and it brings him back to life. But he has to sleep for like 100 years in it for it to work. So you're saying that there's also these kind of chambers are underneath the Great Pyramids, like the Giza pyramids, or all pyramids?
The only ones that I've found are underneath the Giza plateau. So like what happened is like back in 2009, I was with a friend who taught me how to meditate. I was in New Zealand, and we lived in New Zealand for a few years. And my friend had a copper pyramid in his garden. And I used to go around there every day and like sit in this pyramid. And I've had some amazing experiences in there. But one time I was meditating with my eyes open, and this little space pod landed in the garden. There was a blue being inside of it. I brought my light out of my body, went and jumped inside, and flew through a tunnel for about 4 or 5 seconds, came out the other side. We were on Alpha Centauri. And I met all these blue beings there, these Lyran beings, had a big download of light codes. They brought me back. This is what kind of catalyzed star magic. We moved back to England a few years later, and then I started seeing like fairies and angels, and I started seeing all these codes that got downloaded into my crown when I was on this when I was on Alpha Centauri. And I was saying to my guides and that, like, what am I supposed to do with all this stuff, like? And they just were saying, you need to meditate more. So my son and I were getting up every morning, and we were going into meditation, and we ended up in these classrooms underneath the pyramids. And we were sat at these like little wooden desks, and I looked left and I looked right, and there were loads of other human beings there, like men and women of all different ages, races. And this guy was coming out, and he was opening up these scrolls, and on the scrolls there were codes, and it was the same codes that I'd had on this download of light, and the same codes I was seeing, like, you know, around me in the empty space, and they were showing us how to use them to heal people. And we went every day for 2 hours for 9 months. And after the lessons every day, we'd go and have a look around the pyramids, and we found like these healing chambers, there were spacecrafts, there was all different things that we found. And so, you know, we take the spacecrafts for a spin, you know, and we'd go into these healing chambers. There's this one chamber that where we do a lot of our training. So you go in, you've got like a stone table on the right-hand side, and it's like a psychic surgery table. So you lie people down, and the surgeons come out. You've got a violet healing pool out in front. You've got a small white one and a gold healing pool up to the right. And you can go and lay in these different pools and have amazing experiences, you know. At night time, that sometimes we'll go and lay in them, go to sleep, and bring ourselves back out in the morning. Or if we've got clients, stick the clients in them for a few hours, bring them out. Amazing healings take place. Yeah.
So that's awesome. There's a lot of mystery with those buildings. So I got a couple questions on that. So while you were exploring there, did you explore anything under the Sphinx? Because there's Robert Schock and another guy named Robert, and I can't remember his last name. They're friends of mine on Facebook. They and Dr. Dr. West. These three gentlemen, they did some either sonograph or topographic mapping around the Sphinx. I think the late 80s or early 90s, and they were able to detect some sort of a room under one of the paws of the Sphinx. Were you able to find out what was in there?
So I didn't go and explore that at this time, like when I was there with my son. However, like since then, we've done like, you know, remote viewing on it. And there's not just that one chamber underneath the floor. There's other chambers in there too. There are like healing pods in there. There's information with rooms with certain like crystal. They look like crystals, but they store knowledge and information. They're like stacked. They're stacked vertically and horizontally. They're sort of more to the back, and there's also stuff underneath as well. Like we used to have a TV show in Romania, and a lot of my sort of spiritual stuff has happened in Romania. But in Romania, they've got like a tunnel on the side of the mountain, and you know, when you go into it, there's big giant chairs and giant crystals, and we've been in there, like not physically but astrally, and that takes you right through to Giza. It takes you right through to the Sphinx, and all of this stuff is linked up underground. There's tunnels that go through to India from it. Yes, everything's kind of linked. These huge tunnels under the ground. So like the Sphinx, the pyramid, all linked into Romania and other parts of the world as well. All these kind of underground tunnels and chambers.
Yeah, I've always thought that the Sphinx and the complex of Giza were linked to other complexes like that, like in South America, Guatemala, and parts of Asia. But do we know who built them? I don't believe the Egyptians built them. They just physically didn't have the math, the technology, or any the necessary tools needed to make them. You would need to have the compass. The Egyptians of the 24th dynasty did not have the compass. They didn't have the wheel. You'd absolutely have to have the wheel to move those large stones from point A to point B. You could probably get them on the barges and move them up the Nile, because the Nile did at one point swim closer to the pyramids. But to get them from the river to the pyramids and then up the pyramids, you'd need the wheel. You'd also need, with the wheel is another technology, the fulcrum, in order to make lever. I don't think you know who built them.
So like every year we do a trip to Egypt. We go there for like around 16 days, and we go from like Cairo down to Luxor, down through the Isis temple and back up. And we go into all the pyramids and all this sort of stuff. About 2 years ago when we were there, we were at this one temple site, and I was stood there next to this guy that was on our tour with us. And I looked to my right-hand side, and I saw like a being, like a much bigger being than me, like a human, but a much taller human. And he had like a laser coming out of his pineal gland, and he was cutting stone. And I saw this kind of like laser just cutting this massive, massive piece of rock. And it was like it was happening in another dimensional space next to me. And so I realized then that, you know, they could literally cut things with their own consciousness. They could actually move things around, you know, levitate things with their own consciousness, cut things, and everything was just kind of like very, very precise. I mean, the pyramids like fascinate me. I mean, it was my birth. We went there this year as well, like in March, and my birthday was on the 8th, and I think it was the 10th or the 11th. I booked the whole pyramid for myself, and I went in there in the dark. I went in for 4 hours. It was absolutely wild. I went into the well at the bottom, went into the Queen's chamber, went up into the King's chamber. I mean, there were so many beings in there. At one time, I was like, you know, man, like, you know, this is kind of crazy. Like, you know, I was trying to be brave, you know, but when you have so many beings walking around you and you can hear the footsteps and you see them coming through the walls and there's loads of them, it really makes you kind of like, you know, wonder a little bit. But I was inside the pyramid, and I was lying down on the floor in the King's chamber, and I brought my light out of my body and went up to the capstone at the top. I had this crazy download. When I came back down into my body, my physical body had rotated almost 180 degrees the other way. I woke up and I was in a different position, but I didn't remember physically moving, but something, either my body moved or the pyramid had moved or something happened, but it was just a bizarre experience. But that night, I met so many beings in there. And right at the end of my 4 hours, my son came in, and he came up into the sarcophagus, and he had a really bad knee. And he lay down in the sarcophagus. He injured it doing some weightlifting. And this being climbed into the sarcophagus with him, put the being's hand around his knee. His knee was better, just like that. Like, you know, wow. Just in seconds. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be cool to get inside that building. There's a Professor Quarryman's inscription up in somewhere in the King's chamber that mentions Khufu or Cheops, whichever, depending on how you translate it, and it's written in like sienna tone paint, and everyone attributes that's who built the pyramid. But even at that time of the Egyptians, they didn't write anything in that type of ink, number one. Number two, anything they did write was carved immediately into stone or limestone. So it was more permanent. So have you ever a chance to see that? And by looking at that immediately, do you think graffiti?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about up above the King's Chamber.
Yes.
Yeah, like I've not been up there physically. Like they don't let you up there anymore. I've tried the last couple of times. Like, come on, guys, let us up there. Like giving them a bit of extra cash and all that. But like they removed the ladder now because you go up to the top. You got the King's Chamber, and then literally just outside the King's Chamber, you look up and you can see the door into the upper chambers. And they used to have a massive ladder up there. Apparently some guy, I can't remember what country he was from, but he took the ladder a few years back, went up there, and he got arrested, put in prison for it. And then they took the ladder at the pyramid then. But apparently you can get special access to go up there. But I've not been up there physically. But when I was there this time, one of the guards, like who works in there, like he's been up there and he showed us the photograph. He shows the photograph of all the drawings and inscriptions and that on the wall up there. So yeah, but you know, I truly feel that, you know, extraterrestrials, you know, angelic humans, whatever you want to call them. I mean, we came from the stars. We used to have like activated 12-strand blueprints, and we could do all of this stuff, and we had all these amazing abilities ourselves, you know. So maybe it was us that built the pyramids in a previous incarnation, you know, when we were more extraterrestrial than, you know, kind of human.
I always felt the same way, that it wasn't necessarily extraterrestrial aliens, but us from an unknown time, an unwritten history that somebody knows about it, because our brains have been tampered with, and we can't access those memories and we can't access those abilities anymore. We use like 10, 11% of our brain, but some of these beings, in order to do that, access 80, 90, 100% of their brain, and then they can do pyrokinesis, telekinesis. They can levitate rocks and stone. And I hadn't heard about cutting stone, but you have a good point where they can shape the stone, cut the stone with their brains. And there are plenty of historical eyewitness events, I guess, where they say that the pyramids were built by giants who levitated rocks across the rivers. So it's fascinating. I wish we could find out someday. And you also have a chapter in your book on pyramids, on cleansing pyramids, and you talked briefly about that. How does that work? What kind of pyramids are they? I mean, there are different specific types of pyramids for different types of illnesses? Because it seems like pyramids are kind of important here with your research and your star magic healing.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good question. So like, there's one kind of like, I mean, we'll call it a technique, like for, you know, and what we do is we kind of connect, like we center ourselves and ask for, you know, star magic, Egyptian clearing pyramids. And then what happens is these like etheric pyramids appear in your heart. You either get 2, 4, 6, or 8, depending on who you're going to work on. So you've got the hologram of the human being that you're going to work on. You've entangled it with them. Or let's say you're in the physical space, you've got a human being. And you ask for the Egyptian clearing pyramids. They appear in your heart. And you place your hands over the knees of whoever you're going to work on. And what happens is the pyramids, they come into your shoulders, down your arms, out your hands into the knees, and you leave your hands over the knees. And then the pyramids, they shoot all around the body. And the 4 sort of corners at the bottom of the pyramid and the apex, there's light and code shooting out of them. And what happens is they move around the inside of the body and they're clearing it and cleansing it. And then they're like boomerangs. You leave your hands over the knees, and then when they're ready, they'll shoot back into your heart and dissolve. And it just smashes up the heavy toxic energy inside someone. Then you can go in and just pull it out really, really easily. Yeah, so that was one of the things that we got shown when we were underneath the pyramids in the mystery schools, my son and I. Yeah.
But you also mentioned quartz pyramids. What other kind of pyramids can you use? I mean, is there one that would help a broken bone? Or are these all mostly just metaphysical and physical type healings, like mental and emotional?
Well, they're all of the pyramids are like, you know, metaphysical, etheric pyramids. But absolutely, I mean, you know, broken bones, bent spinal columns. I mean, all sorts of different things, like anything really. Like, you know, we've removed cancerous tumors. I mean, I got arrested like 3 years ago for healing people with cancer. You know, I went through a 2-year court battle because, you know, we had a lady that got healed and she showed her medical evidence on YouTube, and that was it. Boom, came and got arrested. But like these things remove all sorts.
They arrested you because there was medical proof you helped someone.
So there was medical proof that we helped someone with the lady. She showed her like scans with the tumors in, and then obviously we did 3 healing sessions, and then there was no tumors. So she made a little video, and I stuck it on YouTube. And the title of the video was Alternative Cancer Treatment. And anyway, like they came and arrested me. You know, under the Cancer Act 1939, you're not allowed to use the word heal or there's a few words that you can't use in the same sentence as cancer anyway. Heal,
cure,
yeah, cure, heal. There's another one as well. And anyway, so they arrested me, and I went through a 2-year court battle. When I went to court, I was in America actually, and I flew from New York, a bit at the Conscious Life Expo, flew back to London, landed at like 5 in the morning, had to be in court at like 9 or whatever it was. I went to court with the kids. They were both under 16 at the time, so they couldn't come in. And I went into the court. I had like 100 or so testimonials, clients' letters from people that we'd done the work on and had amazing results. The judge read them. She turned around to me and she said, "There's nothing more than I'd love to lock you up, Mr. Sargeant, but you got 2 minors outside and you're a single father, so my hands are tied." So she gave me a £6,000 court fee and said, off you go. Yeah.
Wow. But she would have locked you up if you didn't have your kids.
And that's what she told me. Yeah.
For helping somebody.
Yeah. Wow.
That's ridiculous. So, but you have this documentation, this 100 letters, and this lady that made the YouTube videos and has the pictures of her with and without the tumors. Why isn't this mainstream? Why isn't this all over the planet? Why aren't, you know, medical centers, cancer centers in America and Russia, England, Ireland, why aren't other places using this?
Yeah, I mean, it's the answer is kind of sad, really, because
money.
You know, healthy people don't make money.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sick people make money. You know, and cancer is big business. You know, like a country's GDP, gross developed product, is partially measured by how much cancer is in the country. The more cancer, the better. A doctor gets between $5,000 and $12,000 commission for administering chemotherapy. So if you've got all of these people running around that don't have cancer, then, you know, how are these doctors going to get their commissions? How are big pharma going to sell their drugs? I got a private investigator to find out who was funding my case that they came on me for, and it was a cancer charity. So a cancer charity had funded the case against me. So, yeah.
Wow. It's unbelievable. I just can't believe that happens. I mean, a lot of people make fun of metaphysical healers, whether it's shamans or, you know, faith healers and whatnot, and acupuncturists, but there's legit science and legit research on how these different types of things work on people, but they don't make any money. So they try to repress it. That doesn't make any sense to me at all. I mean, obviously it does because they want to make the money, but it's just greed. It's got to be greed. It's got to be the main cause behind
that. Yeah, greed and control.
Yeah,
because they can control us when we're unhealthy. Like the thing is this, right? Like, you know, like from an advertising point of view, I say I'm an energy healer, but really and truthfully, I've never healed a single human being in my life. All I've done is create an environment and facilitated a process. Mm-hmm. The human being actually heals themselves, because the human beings, the human body is designed to self-heal, but there are certain things in the human psyche, the energy field, that get in the way. So all we do is just create the environment, change things around on a subatomic basis, on a metaphysical level, and then clear it up, and then the energy can flow. And then once the energy can flow, the human being can physically shift and change. So, and we've all got these capabilities. That's the thing.
And once you do that for someone, does that stay, or does later on they might need another healing that something blocks them again and they have to get another treatment from you?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like both. like sometimes, you know, you might go and just do one healing on a human being and that's it. Boom, that's it. That's it. They're cool. You know, and then you might get someone else, you might need to do 3, 4 healings and then they're okay. You get some people that you'll do a healing on and they're great. And then something else kind of trips them up, or there's some other kind of event that re-triggers something, and you know they might kind of fall and spiral, you know, and then you might have to do another healing. And yeah, so there are some people that you do a healing and they might get some kind of relief, but not all. It's not like 100% relief. So let's say they might get a 50% shift, or a 40 or a 60, and then you might need to come in a couple of weeks later and then finish it off, or you might need to come in 2 more times, you know, over the course of a few months. It just depends. Everybody's different, you know?
Yeah, that's true. Everyone's body reacts differently to different stimuli. And this is kind of a weird question, but there are type of beings called empaths who are able to sense other people's, depending on the type of their empathy, either their emotional distress or physical distress. When you walk down the street, are you able to go, that guy needs me, that guy doesn't, that guy might, that guy does?
It's interesting. Like I was where we live. We've just moved to like a new place. Like and I was down this kind of like sort of health center thing, literally like 3 or 4 days ago, and I was sat in the bar afterwards, just getting some food after my gym session, and I ended up speaking to this lady and her daughter next door, and I was listening to their conversation. They were talking about like ghosts and all this sort of stuff, so I was kind of intrigued, you know. And somehow we got talking and we started talking about ayahuasca and plant medicine. And her daughter like said to me, you know, tell me what's wrong with me. And I kind of sort of just sensed it for a second. I said, you got a lot of anger in you. Like there's something wrong with your liver, because I could see the toxicity in her liver. And she kind of like, she was like, no way. Like she was blown away by it because, you know, she had a really bad liver. And it turned out that her father had abandoned her when she was little, and she had this rage at the masculine, rage at the dad, you know, and it was all stored in the liver. So I'm more one of these people that kind of sees things. I do sometimes feel things, but I'm more of like a seer and a knower rather than a feeler. And we get a lot of people, right, that come to our trainings that are amazing empaths. And, you know, some empaths are like the Jerry, I feel everything inside my clients. I don't want to feel it anymore, you know? Or they're walking down into the supermarket, or they're going through town and they're just picking up all this stuff. But for me, I think it's an amazing gift, because if you're working on someone and you've got a really bad right shoulder or spine or whatever it is, and you know exactly what is going on in their body, so it's like a measuring tool. You've got a precise, accurate measuring tool. So I always say to people, listen, like own that gift. Like don't want to get rid of it, because you might get rid of it and then wish you had it back again. So like just embrace it and own it and start to learn to deal with it, so you can like turn it on and shut it down depending on where you are. Because when you are in public and you've got all these crazy energies around, some high, some low, and they see like a beautiful light, they're like, you know, food, let's go. And so like, you know, you can get drained, or you can start to pick up, you know, other people's stuff, and it's hard for some people to deal with, but at the same time, it's an amazing gift, and I wish I had it more. You know, sometimes I'll get that kind of feeling, but it's few and far between.
Yeah, and you're right. It's kind of a gift and a curse. I do have it somewhat. I don't know that I can control it, but I've gone to places and I go to walk into a room and I'm like, yeah, no, I'll go somewhere else, you know, because I can just detect tensions in the room. Or I'll go to another place that I know where I'm going to have fun, and I don't have any problem that there's a huge crowd of people there, like Star Trek conventions, football games, American football, not soccer. I go and watch. I like the Redskins, so I go to the Redskins stadium, even though there's like 90,000 people in the stadium. I don't like that larger crowd, but more than half of them are on my side. More than half of them like the Redskins, like me, and the other half of them are against us. And so I get that camaraderie where us Redskin fans are against the Philadelphia Eagles fans, and we can hate them for this 4-hour trip while we're watching this game. So that's kind of fun, but it can be, it's you want to go out and do something, but you get like this vibe in your brain, like, no, if I go there, it's not going to be good. So you don't go.
Yeah. And it's again, like, you know, you can grid yourself up and all this sort of stuff, but yeah, sometimes, you know, it's better to kind of just not go there, you know. Yeah, I mean, like myself, like if I go to a cinema or I go out for lunch or something, and you're in kind of like a pub environment or a restaurant environment, I always go in and I'm like kind of like just I keep my heart open, I really kind of like get my energetic fields going, and I don't really put grids and stuff to protect myself, but I kind of keep my heart open and just keep that frequency really, really high and just really focus on it whilst I'm there. And
Yeah, it's like
yeah.
the first day of school, if everybody remembers their first few days of school, whether it's elementary, junior, high school, whatever, you know, you got to go. You don't want to. You think there's going to be nothing but bad things happen once you do get there, but your mom or your dad or someone pushes you into that door, and once you get in there, you realize, oh, this ain't so bad.
Yeah. I remember a few times when I was 5, 6 years old, holding on to the door, kicking and screaming, not wanting to go in there,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but then once the door closes, you're like, yeah, it ain't so bad. So, wow. That's a good session. I don't have any follow-up questions at this point, but
I got them. I was just waiting for you to call me, to summon me forth. I know.
It was coming. I was running out of topics.
Well, I know I'd read on your bio and stuff that you had gotten into in your younger days with criminals and kind of a sordid past. I had a similar thing happen when my dad was alive. He was a very big man who was mentally and physically abusive. He's passed away now. He died of a heart attack. But he always told me if I ever did drugs, he'd kill me. So I never did drugs. But when he died, I did a lot of drugs. And for several years, I dealt drugs, hung out with people that were, shady, that I shouldn't have been hanging out with, criminal types, gangster wannabes and stuff like that. They called me vampire because I was pale. I've always been pale. Luckily, I sold. I didn't do anything too terrible, but that's still bad when you're doing that, getting caught up in coke and meth and stuff and things like that and pharmaceuticals and selling them. And for several years, I did it, and I self-medicated. And now the only drugs I deal with that I'm trying to cut back because of blood pressure is a nicotine vape sometimes, which I'm close to quitting that. I've got that down to a lot less compared to other people. I've had bottles of that crap last years. I'm like, how's this crap lasted me so long? I've had this bottle for like a year. So I'm doing a lot less, but I'd like to quit it completely. And then we have weed in Florida that's, medicinal. So that's something I enjoy to do, but I try not to do it too much because I notice it's affecting my blood pressure and stuff like that. And I have arthritis and pain and things like that. I was doing this stuff called kratom, which is legal here, which has it's a of the coffee family. If you do a good bit of it, it's kind of like an opioid. And I was taking that. I quit that finally. And right now I'm just down to nicotine and weed. I'd like to get rid of the nicotine, and I'm working on the weed. But my point is I don't do the crazy drugs that I was doing, coke and meth and crazy. If I did that stuff now, I'd be in the emergency room. But my point is I got caught up in, some shady individuals. I turned into redneck Scarface for a few years down here in Georgia, and but I know you got caught up in some stuff, and you had some events. What can you tell us about a little bit of your past, and what were some of the events that finally made you get away from that and enter this field? This healing, helping others.
Yeah, as a kid, like I played rugby. Like I played a lot of sports actually, but I gave them all up to play rugby because I was kind of good at a lot of sports and I couldn't do them all. And also, like I played tennis. My mum and dad couldn't afford to keep the tennis lessons up, so I chose to play rugby. And I got banned from playing rugby when I was like 13, 14 years old, and turned to like drink and drugs and you know the rave scene was like really rife in England. So I was up and down the country, ecstasy, acid, all that sort of stuff, blowing my whistle and, dancing around like a nutter to the early hours of the morning, like every weekend. And like a couple of my friends died when I was about 16. And I was like, I got to really kind of maybe sort my life out and get out of this stuff. So I ended up, I got a job at a local ice cream factory, and I was working their night shift. I was selling weed and other drugs as well in the background. And my plan was to save up some money and like buy an old camper van and then go traveling around Europe with my girlfriend at the time. So I worked for a year, saved up the money, bought the camper van. And then what happened is the night before we were supposed to leave, I was in the pub and this man walked into the pub. And we'd never met him before, we'd never seen him before. And he walked straight up to us and he gave us a yellow piece of paper. And on it, it had a name and a mobile telephone number, a Spanish mobile telephone number. He said, I hear you're going traveling, don't do it. He said, go to Tenerife and the Canary Islands, you'll earn £300 a week and you get free accommodation. And then he walked away and we were just there like with our pints, you know. And we were like, where's Tenerife? So we looked it up, we got a map out and all that. And we thought, right, it's near Africa, it's hot. And we're thinking £300 a week, you know, this is a lot of money for us, you know. So we sold the van the next day. We've got 2 one-way tickets to Tenerife. And we ended up kind of jumping out of the frying pan and into the fire. So I phoned this guy when I got there, and he ended up working for a high-profile criminal organization. A guy called John Palmer he was involved in like the gold bullion bricksmat robbery at Heathrow Airport in 1983. They stole like £28 million of the gold bullion. Apparently, he melted it down, and I ended up working for him, you know, in my late teens. So that was kind of like a real kind of like interesting period of my life, because that kind of, I was working for this timeshare organization, which led into drugs, which led into bank fraud and all different types of things. And my life kind of spiraled out of control. But, you know, I was really enjoying my time because I was making loads of money. And I didn't really want anything else apart from like material stuff. You know, this spiritual thing hadn't happened to me. In the end, we moved back to England because there was a lot of like gang warfare and turf warfare in Tenerife. I'd met my wife then, my daughter was born, and we were kind of, I think we should get out of here, you know. So we moved back to England, and that was around that sort of time. I told you the story earlier about when my wife came downstairs and blah, 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 you know, she with the dark voices in her head. That's how I met my first spiritual teacher. So that event happened, but something else really profound happened at the same time. Went back to Romania, and where my ex-wife is from, and we were traveling from a place called Piatra Neamț in the north down to Bucharest Airport, and I was asleep in the passenger seat of a taxi, and Laura and the kids were in the back. Our son Josh had been born by then, and I wake up and there's a loud crash, and like the taxi is swaying from side to side. There's glass and there's wind. And I thought to myself, boy, we're in a bad accident. We're either going to hit the oncoming traffic or the car's going to flip over. And then all of a sudden we came to a stop and there's no other cars on the road. I looked at the taxi driver, he looked petrified. Alea, our daughter, was climbing out from underneath the driver's seat. Laura had Josh in her arms and both their mouths are full of glass. There was blood dripping down my face and there was a hole in the windscreen, but I wasn't bleeding. So I was like, this is so strange, what's happened? But I got out of the car. I looked about 30 meters up the road and there were 2 ladies lying on the side of the road. I looked about another 150 odd yards up the road and there was what looked like a dead body. And what had happened is these 3 ladies were crossing the road early in the morning to go to work. The first one got hit clean on with a taxi. She came through the windscreen, hit me whilst I was asleep, got flipped over the car and died. The second one had her ankles cut clean off. And the third one was physically okay. So I've checked on the kids and stuff. I've walked past the lady. Her ankles were just lying on the side of the road. A guy had come out. He was on the phone from a nearby factory. I thought he must have called the emergency services. There's nothing I can do. I was kind of fixated on this lump in the road. So I've walked towards it. It was just getting daylight. And I probably got within maybe like 10 meters of this body. And I saw this energy just hovering above, like, which is the lady's soul. And I'm shaking my head like, am I really seeing this? Like, get out of my head. I didn't want to see it. Like, all these things were going through my head at the same time. And I carried on walking, and the soul just kind of fizzled into the ether and disappeared. And by that time, I was looking down over her body. Her legs were wrapped up over her head, and it was like someone had taken an old car to the scrap heap. Like, whatever was inside the body, it had no use for it anymore. It's just gone on its merry way. And I looked up to the heavens and I said, thank you. And I remember at the time I wanted a whiskey and a cigarette. That's all I thought about. And I don't drink whiskey and I don't smoke cigarettes, but it felt as time to celebrate. It was like the universe like smacking me around the face and saying, come on, Jerry, wake up, man. We're so much more than these physical bodies. You know, we're atoms and molecules in continuous movement with space, we're energy. So that happened. About 6 months later, it was less than that actually. Laura had a headache. She was lying down on the bed one day, and for some reason I thought I could take it out of her head. I don't know why I thought that, but I did. So I walked over to her. I looked in her head and saw this green energy. So I reached in and pulled it out, and she got up off the bed like she didn't have a headache. And I thought, that's a little bit weird, but I just sort of carried on doing what I was doing. And then I had the experience with Laura in the house, the reptilian that I met that I was talking to you about earlier. And then we moved to New Zealand, and I had that trip in the spaceship. Some other things happened. Then came back to England. I started seeing fairies and angels and having different experiences. Then had the experiences in the mystery schools in Egypt. And then what happened then is people just started coming into my life that needed healing. And I was like, let me just see if this stuff works. And I was trying it and it was working. And I kept trying it and it kept working. So I decided to go to like a Mind, Body, Spirit festival in my local town. So I made up these little flyers. I'd written a book called Into the Light. I took the book and I made some forms up and I said, if you put your name down, I'm going to draw 3 names out of the hat at the end of the weekend. And if your name comes out, I'm going to give you a free healing. And about 70 or 80 people put their name down, and I phoned every single one of them and told them they'd won, just so I could practice. So I had like 70 or 80 people to practice on. I practiced on them all, got some great results. So I phoned them all back up and said, can I please come to your house and get a video testimonial? So I was driving all over the place. We got video testimonials. That's when we decided to set the business up. And then when we set Star Magic up, I was meditating on a hill near where I live. And the same blue being, whose name is Derekwai, a Lyran being, came and visited me again. It's the same one that took me through the portal to Alpha Centauri. And I'm meditating, looking out over the town, and the whole town disappeared. He sat next to me, and he showed me the Christ consciousness grid of the planet with all these little lights. And I said, what are those lights? He said, they're healing centers. You've got to build them. I said, well, if I build them, who's going to work in them? He said, you need to train people. So I ran home, opened up my laptop. I designed this training program. This was like sort of September time, like mid to end of the year. And we put a training program out for the following February in 2017. And it filled up really quick and people came from all over the world. And we've trained like thousands of people in more than 40 countries since then. And we're in the process of building our first healing center in Transylvania and Romania. We just bought more land in the UK. We bought land in Madeira and Portugal. It's all happening. Like this blue being, I've just been following his instructions and everything's just kind of happening. Yeah, so this is kind of how it all came about.
And it also sounds, excuse me, Jeff, it sounds a lot like you and Jeff have a similar catalyst as to what started your journey. So Jeff having the testicular cancer and his father dying, and he's being able to see these UFOs and star beings and whatnot, and you having seen this lady fly through the taxi and die, and you see her float away. I'm exactly the opposite. I've seen Bigfoot. I've seen plenty of UFOs. I don't think I've ever seen an alien up close, but I might have. I'm not sure. But I've had those kind of experiences very, very early on. And then somewhere in the middle, I saw the process of death, kind of like what you saw. It was a car accident, but I didn't see the guy die. But the way he was injured, he wasn't going to survive it. So do you think that that's a catalyst, that it's something that we all have in common, that we see some extremely traumatic thing or have some extremely traumatic thing happen to us, and that opens the gateway? Because I never thought of that before. I never thought that there was a trauma that I was able to see Bigfoot and UFOs, and I just thought I was lucky. Is that the catalyst? Is what gives these paranormal things to us?
Yeah, I mean, I've spoke to so many different people about their different experiences, and some people are just they're naturally plugged in and stay plugged in from birth.
Mm-hmm.
Like all children are plugged in, but
Yeah.
we get kind of shut down sometimes, and then we've got to go through that remembering process. But some parents encourage their children, and it kind of stays with them. I was one of those kids that was kind of shut down. I've spoke to people that have had like, crazy awakenings through some kind of accident or through some kind of abuse or through some kind of trauma, and it's catalyzed something. I mean, like, I think with me, for example, I had to have something serious happen, and to really kind of like, it had to be something that I saw kind of like with my own eyes,
Mm-hmm.
because when I look back through my life, other things have tried to wake me up. But I was so focused on my material world and the stuff that I was doing, it wasn't strong enough to get me to pay attention. But this car crash, seeing the soul and all this sort of stuff, like, I couldn't deny it. There was no way that I could say that wasn't real. And then once I knew that it was real, I was like, I need to find out more about it. Then you start journeying, you start exploring, you start getting inquisitive, and you just want to find out more.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think there are some that are tuned in, but I don't know if maybe they look back in their life. Maybe there's something that turned them on or tuned them in. For me, it was Hurricane Agnes. 72, 73 is this huge, one of the biggest hurricanes to hit the Americas even till today. And we were without power for about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and other parts of like Pennsylvania and Maryland were out for months without power. And so I was a little kid, 5, 6, 7 years old. And what do you do when you're a kid? You go out and play, or you watch TV. That's what we did back in the 70s. We couldn't watch TV, and it was kind of hard to go out and play because everything we played on was destroyed. So we had about a 3-foot puddle of water in our basement. So my brother and I would swim in the basement with nothing else to do. And my parents we had just moved to Maryland, and they had saved some of their boxes of books. Most of their books had been destroyed. My parents were huge readers. And so I got bored one day. I opened up a box and started looking through books. And it was like, I found my dad had a copy of Hitler's Mein Kampf. He had another book on the entire history of World War II. And then I saw Chariots of the Gods written by Eric von Daniken. And I was like, that's cool. And I looked through it and I found these weird pictures. I found the Nazca lines were interesting. I found there's a stone or several stones in Guatemala that have gears carved into them from people who wouldn't have gears. And I thought that was at 6 years old. I thought that's striking. Then 4 or 5 years later, when I was 11 or 12, I actually read the book, and I've read it 5 or 6 times since. And that's kind of what opened the door for me to at least the UFO, paranormal, and Bigfoot world, was a hurricane.
It's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And where did you go from there?
From there, I've been on and off researching this since I was about 11. So I've read several books on it. Most of my books got thrown away before I just recently moved up here a year ago. So I lost a lot of my research, but I've seen almost every UFO documentary there is that's on DVD or film or VHS. Since being with Jeff on the show for the last 8 years, I've interviewed quite a few big names in the industry: Nick Redfern, Bill Burns. Did we have Don Schmidt on here at one point, or did he back out? I can't remember. But we've interviewed a lot of people on this, and I've come to the conclusion that what I started seeing as a kid, it's not fake. There's no conspiracy behind the fact that there's some weird stuff going on with our planet that we are not in control of.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and it's not even just this planet, it's the whole system that we're inside of, this 15-dimensional system. The whole thing's kind of controlled. A lot of people think, well, we move up the dimensional spaces, up the frequency band, and everything's going to be a lot more pleasant. But actually, there's manipulation and control all the way through the ranks, not just here on planet Earth. So, yeah, I mean, we need to get out of this time-based matrix. And these physical bodies that we're inside of are our best opportunity to do that. We as humans, like we were saying earlier, we have the DNA potential to be so much more than we actually are right now. We can go back to that kind of angelic human version of us where we can teleport, where we can use telekinesis, where we can heal at distance, where, you know, we can bring our light from one phase out of one reality and into another reality. Like, you know, telepathy, all of this stuff, these are natural abilities. We've just forgotten them. You know?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think somewhere in our history, it's been turned off. The Anunnaki, who are one of the alien species that allegedly created us using their DNA and the DNA of native species from this Earth, this planet, they say that they've tuned our brains down or dumbed our brains down so that we can't use our full potential. And it's at some point, it's kind of a weird story, and I don't know the full history. Somebody does. I think maybe it's in the Vatican. I bet maybe some higher ups in the U.S. government might know the full story. But somewhere in our past, when they created us, they couldn't control us, and they made us at first when we couldn't breed, where we were just cloned and grown in a laboratory, and then sent into the mines to work for them to mine gold and other precious metals. But the mining was so difficult that they were losing workers faster than they could reproduce them. And the workers back then had a much larger capacity of brain. And now we're talking like, gosh, I just can't remember the names of the previous versions of us, but they had a large, like not by much, but a larger capacity brain than we do. And then all of a sudden there's Homo sapiens sapiens. We have a smaller capacity brain, but we're more advanced than the ones that we kill off. Then we're talking like Neanderthals and Homo rhodensiensis and others like that. It's kind of anti-climactic. You know, you don't have a better technology brain and then lose to us with the smaller technology brain. So there's something in our past that's really weird.
I mean, if you look at Earth, like we're in a kind of a third, fourth dimensional space. And Earth and also other planets in our solar system used to be part of Tara, which was like a fifth dimensional planet Earth. And if you go back through kind of like galactic history, you know, you had Lyrians and Syrians and the Anunnaki, the Lyran Syrians, and they created the original kind of angelic human 12-strand template. And it was on Tara that the angelic humans were first, you know, created and lived. And there became manipulation and corruption within that environment, but we still had our full 12-strand template. But the planetary grids were messed around with, and there was huge explosions and cataclysms. And then when Tara exploded, that kind of created our solar system and the other 12 planets that we had. And it's interesting that you talk about like the brain as well, because, and like the bigger brain. Mm-hmm. A few years back, we got an email from a guy who lived in South America, and he woke up one morning and his brain was his skull was massive. Yeah, his skull just like doubled or tripled in size. He had this big head on his shoulders, and his brain had stayed the same on the inside. So when he kind of went like that, his brain would fall down and hit the side of his head, and he couldn't run, he couldn't jump up and down because his brain would rattle. So he was asking, you know, can you help us? And I was like, I mean, I always say yes, and then, you know, and just commit to it, and then work out how afterwards. So I said, yeah, I didn't have a clue what I was going to do, but whenever someone writes in and wants healing, we get a photograph of them. So we look into their eyes, get kind of a readout and see what's going on. And I was asking, like, what had happened to this fella? And I was told that he'd been meditating, doing some cosmic work, and the light frequencies had triggered his extraterrestrial DNA. So his skull it grown back to its normal size. So I ended up connecting with him on Skype one day, and he said, "Jerry, please help me make my skull go smaller." And I said to him, "Listen, bro," I said, "why don't you make your brain bigger?" You know, I mean, I didn't have a clue how I was going to shrink his brain or grow his brain or shrink his skull, but like I was thinking, that's how you should be. Like, this is an opportunity to really gain some knowledge and power here. But like he said, look at me, I look stupid. He said, when I'm walking down the street, everybody's laughing at me. So anyway, like we went into this healing session and we went underneath the pyramids that we were talking about earlier. and they ran him through this kind of like MRI machine. And I watched his skull go, and it kind of shrunk back down to its normal size, literally within seconds. And he was okay. But it really made me realize that we are supposed to be bigger. It is true. And the key to activating this kind of, extraordinary potential is in the light codes that are coming from us celestial beings, stars, different planets, different dimensional spaces. And like since that guy, we've had people that have wrote in like my feet just doubled in size, or my hands just grew massive, and things like that. So people are experiencing these kind of physical shifts quite rapidly when they start plugging into these data streams, which I find like fascinating,
Yeah, it is kind of a neat thing. Everyone seems to think that we're from this planet, and my best evidence for saying we're not is look at all the other mammals on the planet. They're covered in hair. They're like almost 100% covered in hair. We're not. We're not even, I wouldn't even call it 10% covered in hair. Their hair is to protect them from the sun, which they do need some stuff from the sun, but most of the stuff coming off the sun is poisonous for all of us. Yet here we are on this planet completely unprotected from the native sun. So we must have come from somewhere else where we didn't need hair, from a lesser deadly sun. It's the only thing I can come up with.
Yeah, and I haven't met loads and loads of different extraterrestrials like on my travels, but I've met a few, and I've never really met any ones that are really hairy. A lot of the ones don't have hair on their head, hair on their bodies. A lot of them don't have like eyebrows and things like that. It's completely different. Yeah, I've met some androgynous ones, some of the different sexes, but yeah, I've met some kind of like bird-like beings that have like feathers, but kind of humanoid beings. They're mostly just kind of just skin. Yeah, you might see them in some kind of jumpsuit or whatever it is, like something very kind of thin layered that it actually can change the temperature of the suit. It can go hot and cold depending on the temperature and the climate of the planet. But yeah, I've never really seen much hair on. I have seen a little bit, but not a lot at all. So I've never really thought about that theory that you're suggesting. But yeah, it makes sense,
Hey guys, we got about 3 minutes.
Okay.
Jerry, it's been great having you on. We really appreciate it, and there's a lot to learn from your journey, and your book's really good, and I look forward to the sequel of it. What's the best website? Do you want to give out a website or something so people can go to?
Yeah, first up, thanks guys for sharing, allowing me to share the time with you. It's been awesome. It's been amazing. Yeah, the website is starmagichealing.com. If you go to starmagichealing.com, you can get access to all of our social media channels. There's free meditations to download, all sorts of stuff. So yeah, just come and plug into the information, and if you've got any questions, just reach out,
Well, we appreciate it so much. It's been a great show, and we'll definitely keep in touch, and thanks so much.
Thank you guys. Thanks so
Jerry.
much. Awesome.
All right. Everybody have a good weekend. Our next guest was next Friday. It will be about Bigfoot. So he's also an actor. So we'll be talking about Bigfoot, the great Squatcharoony. So look forward to that. Everybody have a happy 4th of July. And that's coming up Monday or something, I guess. It's not nothing. I don't really feel that free here lately, but I guess I'll eat some hot dogs and some good food. So everybody have a good weekend.
Fireworks.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good weekend. Thanks, Jerry. Thanks, Jay. Take care.
Good night.
In broadcast.